Recorded Books presents a Southern Voices production of Prisoners of War by Steve Yarbrough. This unabridged recording is narrated by Pete Bradbury and directed by Ian McCulloch. Southern Voices is a celebration of the rich heritage and distinct characteristics of Southern writers. This book is copyrighted 2004 by Steve Yarbrough. This recording is copyrighted 2005 by Recorded Books. It's the Mississippi Delta, 1943. Dan Trimms and his black friend L.C. await the inevitable draft. Dan longs to be torn away from the memory of his father's recent suicide, the guilt and sorrow of his mother, and the protection of his uncle. But for L.C., there's a danger more immediate than the one wished for overseas, the society into which he was born. And now, Prisoners of War.
Chapter 1. The rolling store was one of two old school buses his Uncle Alvin had bought after they were deemed unsafe to haul children. The one Dan drove in the summer of 1943 had a couple holes in the floorboard. Half the time the starter wouldn't work, and then he'd have to put the transmission in neutral, get out, and turn the hand crank. The rear wheels, which had been pulled off a cotton trailer, were bigger than the ones in front, so the bus always looked like it was headed downhill. His uncle had outfitted each bus with display cases, candy counters, a soft drink box, and a deep freeze. Dan and the other driver, L.C., sold farmers and hoe hands everything from chocolate bars and knee-high sodas to coal oil lamps and radios. Gas rationing had made the routes more successful than they otherwise might have been, since a lot of folks couldn't get into town very often. Alvin never had any trouble getting gas because he never had any trouble getting sugar, something the bootleggers couldn't do without. He traded them 100-pound sacks of it for cases of bootleg whiskey, which he in turn passed on to the members of the local rationing board. "It seemed like making tough decisions gives a fellow case of cottonmouth," Dan had heard him say. "That's the thirstiest bunch of doctors and lawyers and bankers I ever saw." His uncle had a special knack for handling people, which usually involved satisfying their appetites. You could tell a lot about a man, he always said, by watching what he put in his mouth. Dan drove into the lot behind Alvin's country store and parked next to the other bus. L.C. finished first every day. His route was shorter. His bus drove a little better, and he generally ignored the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. Dan had asked him once if he didn't feel bad about breaking the law when everybody else was trying to conserve gas for the troops, and L.C. had wrinkled his nose, as he was apt to whenever something amused him. "Let me ask you, Dan," he said, "do your uncle feel bad about breaking the law?" "Well, he don't break it, he just bends it a little." Elsie laughed. "For him it bends, but for a nigger it's just too stiff. We're working with a lot less flexibility than y'all are." Elsie said y'all a lot and we constantly, calling attention to the differences between them. He also liked to employ a phrase he'd heard last Easter when his mama made him go to church. Parallel universes. "That's what the preachers say we living in, Dan. You got your universe, I got mine. I see you spinning by, you see me. Time to time we both wave, say hey, but never the twain shall meet. And that last part comes straight from the Bible." When Dan protested that he couldn't see what the parallel universe theory had to do with Easter, L.C. said, "Course not. Over there in y'all's universe, Easter mean colored eggs, but we ain't got no eggs to color. Sure enough interested in that rising part, though." Today, as always, L.C. was waiting for him, sitting atop the propane tank, his dusty work shoes lying on the ground, and his big toe protruding from a hole in one sock. "How much you sold, Dan?" "Took in close to $30. L.C. whistled. "That's the profitable route. If I had me that route, I'd be tempted to steal your uncle blind." "You could steal from him anyway if you got a mind to." "Nah. I'd take from him, he might take from me." "What could he take? You ain't got nothing anyway, far as I can tell." "Got myself. He could take and give it to the Army." "The Army don't want it. They get all the bus drivers they need. Army wants fighting men."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?